Hey, honors chemists. I just wanted to make a quick video for those of us who need help with trying to do the copper to iron ratio lab data. So here is an example of some student data from the nail lab. As you can see, the student was able to calculate how many grams of copper and how many grams of iron that were produced. Use this as a template to help you figure out how to calculate your mass of iron and copper. If you could follow the color coding, the way that the student was able to figure out the amount of copper that was produced was they took the mass of their empty beaker and copper and they subtracted it from the mass of the empty beaker. If there's another way that you got the mass of copper, that's totally fine. This student got 3.42 grams. Then, if you want to figure out the mass of the iron nails, this student took the mass of the nails after and subtracted it initially from the mass of the nails before. So they did the before mass was 2.200 and the after mass was 0.198 grams, and so they had 2.0029 grams of the iron nails that reacted. Now don't forget how to convert grams to moles for this number 2 step in your calculations. You take the mass of whatever element you're talking about. So for the example of copper, I had 3.42 grams. I divided by 63.546 and I got moles. I could do the same thing for iron. Then for step 3 in the data, and this is the important part for the assignment here, all is being asked is taking the moles of copper and dividing it by the moles of iron. And so for this student, they did 0.05382 and they divided it by 0.0385 and they got 1.5. I'm going to tell you to put that number over 1 to help you figure out the next steps here. This student got 1.5 over 1, but to express that as a ratio or as a fraction, 1.5 over the 1 is the same thing as 3 over 2. If you got 1, then it would be 1 over 1. If you got 2, it would be 2 over 1. If you got 0.3, technically that's 1 over 3. If you got 0.6, that's 2 over 3. And that fraction tells you how many moles of copper atoms reacted for however many moles of iron atoms reacted. So I'm going to use this student's 3:2 ratio. They're saying that for every 3 moles of copper atoms, there are 2 moles of iron atoms that react. So now we're going to be looking at the skeleton of the chemical reaction. We know that iron and copper chloride, which I have as blue and red and green circles on the reactant's left side of the equation, that's what we're starting with. We're trying to figure out how many copper and iron atoms we end up with. If I use this student's data, look at the end result here. This student had 3 moles of copper atoms that reacted with every 2 moles of iron atoms. I represented copper atoms as red, and I represented iron atoms as blue. Notice how I have a before and after. My reactants are before, and my products are after. I have to have the same number of atoms of copper atoms before as I do after because of the law of conservation of matter. Same thing with iron. I had 3 moles of copper atoms for every 2 moles of iron atoms. So I had 2 iron atoms that reacted with the 3 copper atoms. So I put 2 blue circles on the right side, and I had 2 blue circles on the left side because of conservation of matter. You're going to notice that we forgot to account for something. If I look at this chemical reaction, and I look at before, which is the left side, and I look at the after, which is the right side of the arrow, I see that I did not account for the green circles. Those green circles are chlorine, and I did not account for the total number of chlorine atoms. We're going to have to figure that out in our next lab. So to recap, what you're going to be doing is there is this assignment, getting the ratio of copper to iron atoms. You are just dragging and dropping your circles. You are going to use your lab data here. This is sample data. You're going to use your data, calculate how many moles of copper and iron that you have, divide those 2 numbers to get the ratio. If you need help with your ratio, just let me know. I could help you tell you what your ratio is if you can't figure it out. Then you're going to use this ratio to sketch a particle diagram like this. Yours is going to start out like this, where you just have iron and copper chloride. This is what yours looks like. And then I'm telling you how many you're going to figure out how many red and blue circles to drop in based off of your ratio. I added 3 blue circles to the right, 3 red circles to the right side because of the 3 moles of copper atoms for every 2 moles of iron. I added another 2 red circles on the left side because I need to have 3 copper atoms on both sides due to conservation of matter. And then for iron, I added 2 iron atoms on the right side. There's that 3:2 ratio. And so mine looks like this. And since I added the 2 iron atoms on the right side, I would be putting 2 iron atoms on the left side for conservation of matter. I'll be talking about this in class again, but use this video and rewatch it again so you know what to do with the ratio that you got.